Hello, everybody. Welcome to Jam. We're just getting ready to start the live stream, so I want to invite everybody to come on in and find a seat. While they're just making the final tweaks, I want to mention a few things about the space. If you need to use a restroom, circuitous as this is, the best thing to do is to go out on the sidewalk, make a left, go up the stairs as if you're going to the Briggs Opera House, and then hook a quick left to the bathrooms up there because there are a million wires between here and the bathroom back there. There's wine and nibbles and seltzer behind you. Please enjoy. And we'll get started in just a second. Oh, are we started? Oh, okay, I guess I'm talking to the world now. They didn't need to know where the bathroom is, but now they do. So I'm so overjoyed to be welcoming you all here to Jam Junction Arts and Media tonight with 4 unbelievable writers, artists. It's really an honor. I'm going to have the privilege of introducing each of them as they come up to read, but I want to give you a little bit of an overview of the evening and let you know where you are. So Junction Arts and Media is an evolution of CATV, Community Access Television. We've taken the White River Indie Film Festival under our roof, and we partner with the 5 main towns of the Upper Valley, and that includes government work, school work, arts and culture, but we're really here to use the tools of media to give expression to the incredible cultural life in the Upper Valley. And so when an artist comes to us and says, hey, could I have an event in your space? It's really a fulfillment for us. And when you're looking around in the room, I would like to just point out that right now in January, we're celebrating Upper Valley makers. The theme is Make It Here, and we have media artist Rich Fedorchak's collage art and his film art, and he will be offering a pop-up workshop, a hands-on opportunity to take film or still images and explore montage and collage. And that's free and open to people of all ages next Saturday. So if you're not already following Jam, we send out a weekly newsletter to let you know what's up on our channels, on our podcasts, on our social media, and most importantly, on our in-person events, which magically turn into media when we live stream them, and then they become a part of the cultural record of our community. And it is also my privilege to just recognize the incredible crew making this happen. Jordan Fitch, back, the wizard behind magic there. Charlie Rose over here on camera. And in the back there is Cedar O'Dowd. They've been working to prepare for today. And then I want to give a huge shout out of thanks to Sam, Cass, and Emma back there, the owners of, Emma Nichols, the owners of the Norwich Bookstore, who Sam also serves on our board at Jam, and is just, they are so energetic about imagining ways to bring authors and audiences together. So thank you. And a few last details, logistics, books are for sale. At the end of the readings, we'll have a brief Q&A for the audience and authors to respond to each other's work, and then we'll have an opportunity to have books signed. So please stick around. And again, don't forget to avail yourself of the wonderful wine, cheese, and things. So I'd like to start by introducing our first reader, Sara Lippmann, who has made the journey to join us today from Brooklyn. Sara is the author of the novel Lech from Tortoise Books and the story collections Doll Palace, re-released 713 Books, and Jerks from Mason Jar Press. Her fiction has been honored by the New York Foundation for the Arts, and her essays have appeared in the Millions, the Washington Post, Catapult, the Lit Hub, and elsewhere. With Seth Rogoff, she's co-editing the anthology Smashing the Tablets, Radical Retellings of the Hebrew Bible for SUNY Press. She teaches with the Writing Collab and lives with her family in Brooklyn. But her most important credential is that she's one of my best friends, and I have had the privilege of raising our children together and being a part of a community in Brooklyn. And the fact that she and Peter Orner were also totally independently literary friends was just such a joy to discover. So I am really thrilled to introduce Sara Lippmann, reading from her first novel.
Thank you, Samantha, for that ridiculously warm welcome, and thank you all of you for being here. I just want to take a moment to thank Peter. I do not want to be unseemly in my effusiveness, but if this turnout is any indication, it is Peter's immense generosity, both in the classroom, on the page, and in his community work, and the way that he extends invitations to so many, including people like me, little schmuck from Brooklyn, to be with you all tonight. So this is a great privilege and honor, and I can't wait to hear from Vievee and Ricardo as well. So thank you, Peter. It's a gift. Okay, so my novel, Lech, I'm just going to set it up. Sorry, I'm all right. It's all good. That's even better. Thank you, Jordan. That's beautiful. Thanks. That's good. All good. So I'll set this up a little bit, and then I'll read a section from it. Lech is a novel that revolves around the potential sale of a property in the Catskill Mountains in the summer of 2014. But that's really just sort of a lame elevator pitch for sort of deeper exploration into the predatory nature of human relationships. It's a that doesn't scan as well with the industry folks, but it is a novel that asks a question from the book of Genesis, of Lech Lecha, which is how to go forth, how to build a life, freeing ourselves from, or at least learning how to shoulder some of the various things that we carry, which I mentioned because I feel like that also sort of somewhat maybe overlaps with some of Peter's imperative in his book. And it's a novel that's told from 5 different points of view. So tonight I'm going to give you a bit from the character Paige, what you need to know about Paige. Paige Murphy is a 22-year-old. She's the daughter of Noreen, who is the local real estate agent who is trying to finagle the sale of this property. She's born and bred in Sullivan County, New York, works as at a diner by day, and moonlights at night at a hospital where she has access to narcotics that she then sells to Tzvi, who is a Hasidic man who is dealing to his rather insular Hasidic Satmar community, also in the region. Paige is desperate to get out of her town of Neversink and move to Florida, but it's not so easy. One of the many things that are holding her back is her addict exterminator boyfriend, Tommy. Tommy also has a bad news cousin named Silko. So I think that's all you need to know for this section. Every time she goes to the river, Paige tells herself it's the last time. She tells herself this as July flumps into August, the air an aggravation of no-see-ums, as she scrambles beneath the hull of the underpass. The 3-spanned bridge makes a viaduct, as if the Delaware were a waterway through ancient Greece. Someday, she'll travel. She owes herself that much, to see beyond here with half of Neversink stupid and strung out. The river is what keeps her straight, even when it runs contrary to her particular hunger. Everything is relative. She's relatively sober tonight. When they first got together, Tommy called her a narc. Who goes to the river just to watch? But she was fascinated by the dip and dab, the zombie stare, syringes jammed with blood, eyes an ungodly white. Paige has a nervous habit of laughing instead of crying. Seeing her classmates slumped in nods, heads heavy as iron balls, Brittany and Regina and Peter Ruxton, almost makes her roar. She kicks a shoe. Tommy. His high top twitches, but it's only reflex. Tommy, chasing weightlessness, is a heap of dead weight. Up on the cliffs, Silko and his boys are out of their minds. They've taken over a deserted hotel not far from Liberty and now have all these notions about living. Like a commune straight from the 60s, Silko acts like a drug-crazed Jesus, only minus the smarts, charisma, or any organized leadership. Paige watches them totter, their voices carrying across the narrows. Here is New York, there is Pennsylvania, but no one's listening. They are close to the tree line. That's how high they are. Paige, the only person alive for miles. Silko sways like a pogo stick, boxers half out of his pants. They all look the same from this distance, a feral, interchangeable pack. The cliffs rise in a series of carved-out tiers celebrated in high fives and wagers. Boys won't do anything without bets, but with bets, they'll do just about anything. Paige has watched Tommy snort dental floss, snort spaghetti, flossing through the roof of his mouth for a dime bag. She has seen them play chicken on a one-lane bridge. Usually, they are too fried to do much harm, but tonight, Silko's keyed up. He beats his chest, holds a licked thumb to the wind, shoves a fist in an armpit, an imitation of something. Get up, pussy, Silko hollers, his jaw pocked in acne scars. Paige protests, Tommy, don't. Let me see you fly. The cliff must be 40 feet high. Tommy wobbles to his feet. Sit your ass down, she says. You don't jump just because some moron says jump. Chillax, Tommy drawls, removing his shoes. Tommy's toes are translucent in the moonlight. I can clear it in my sleep, he says, and true, this is what they do, what they've done for hundreds of years. This is the fire that burns through his blood, but tonight, Paige can feel it, will not end well. Even at the deepest part of the river, people have wound up paralyzed, spines busted on a rusted fridge. You can't see the bottom. Silko goes over first, a running jump, but the rocks are slick and he slips, scraping his back. Jesus, Mary, Joseph. His body falling like a sudden tragedy, crashing into the deep. Wait for me, Tommy shouts. Don't. Paige's voice cracks, but Tommy's fine, invincible. Assholes are always invincible. His jump's so clean, there's hardly a splash, only he forgets to remove his hat, trucker foam bobbing like a buoy downstream. Hallelujah, he bellows. When he climbs ashore, Paige peels off his wet things and unzips his sweatshirt, his clammy fingers feeling clumsily under her shirt. Her nipple is a stone. What am I going to do with you, Tommy? He passes her a beer, but Silko won't leave them alone. I'm bored. Let's go rustle up some fun. Paige, where are all your Jew friends tonight? Not friends. Paige scrapes the foil off her bottle. God's country is what they call the clusterfuck off Route 17. Thursday night, so people are out, hitching rides, dancing their odd dances. Silko says, let's shake a few bucks from their stockings and pilgrim shoes. A bad idea from the get, but she can't police every idea, and someone has to chaperone. Paige can barely reach the pedals of Tommy's truck, rather his brother's truck. Tommy's brother is in Iraq. Afghanistan? He's someplace, or was, last she'd heard. They drive through Kiamisha. The town sign says, we mean clean water, and pull into the Bolorama. Black hats turn on asphalt, and immediately Paige regrets coming. 1 foot in Florida, if she can keep it together, she is this close to gone. People stop talking and stare. Like ants at a picnic, there's strength in numbers. Paige shuts the radio. Women and children stand to one side of the parking lot in matching checked dresses. It's late. Doesn't anyone sleep? The men huddle up, talk with their hands. The women look old from far away, but up close they are young, younger than Paige, teenage brides, heavy wigs hiding their faces. This one, pregnant, with a double stroller and 2 girls beside her, stares at Paige as if she were an aid worker on convoy to a refugee camp, as if in need of saving, as if Paige might save her. Who's the connect? Silko says. I'm the connect. Shut up, Murphy. Which one is he? He's not here. Paige clicks the column into reverse, but a crowd has gathered, preventing her from backing out. She spies Svi standing slightly apart, cupping an elbow with one hand and twisting the short growth of his beard with the other, and averts her eyes. Tommy stumbles out, ragged from the river. The Black Sea parts. If she intervenes, what good will it do? Everything is a hairpin from anarchy. She never should have mentioned the cash in Svi's pocket. A van careens into the lot and out pours Silko's entourage, junkies fleeing a clown car, flannel shirts flailing behind them like capes. It's a rumble out of West Side Story, only it isn't. It's a wasted fantasy. Paige shuts her headlights. Svi steps forward as if to announce himself. Here I am, shoulders back, chest square and unafraid. Tommy slams him against an electrical pole. Silko waves a switchblade like he'll slice any beard, but it's empty bluster. Black hats backpedal, punch flip phones. Within minutes, sirens move in. Tommy turns toward the disco of red, white, blue, and suffers a hook to the chin. He topples easily. The crowd is cheering at Silko, who's flapping around like an untamed hose. Tommy rolls to his side and spits. Paige flings open the cab door. Why must you ruin everything? She kicks Tommy in the ribs. God, it feels good. He is helpless and weak. She kicks again. Once her rage is unleashed, there's no stopping it. Tommy writhes like a slug. He takes it. He doesn't even try to get up. His body is a beanie baby, a bag of buckwheat, punctured seed. She kicks and kicks. He spills. She is just getting started, kicking him long after he's bruised and bleeding, crying out for mercy until the cops twist her wrists and pull her off of him. Thanks.
Reset for Ricardo. Ricardo, welcome. We have a little reset. We're going to just get the projector going. That's a little foreshadowing. Our next reader, Argentinian Ricardo Siri, currently teaches at the Center for Cartoon Studies. Got some fans in the house. Well known internationally for his wildly popular daily cartoon, Macanudo. Yes. Yeah? It is now syndicated by King Features and available in the U.S. Liniers also writes and illustrates picture books, including Written and Drawn by Henrietta and The Big Wet Balloon, and the most recent Wildflowers, Candlewick Tune picture books in simultaneous Spanish and English language editions. He's illustrated New Yorker covers, album covers, and collections of travel journals. And Peter said you sometimes do alternative covers for other people's books. We thought that could be a party trick later. A musician and performer, he often draws for audiences accompanied by live music in countries all over the world. And we're a country in the world, and we have live music coming next. So we'll see what happens. But again, the most important connection I have with Ricardo is that I had the great fortune to teach his daughter Matilda, who's an incredible filmmaker and participated in one of our camps. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Samantha. Yeah, this is the portion, the show and tell part of the thing. Because also, I'm friends with Peter. You know, I have here his book, Still No Word From You. Lately, I've been indulging into a very dumb hobby that it just takes a lot of time. I have all these books that I have to hand in. And for some stupid reason, I've been doing the covers of books that already have a cover. Yeah? But so this is the last one I made. It's called Still No Word From You, right? There's notes from the margin, Peter Orner. There's a slightly bloated Peter Orner in the cover. I don't know, I'm sorry, man. But this is what happens every 2 or 3 days at my home. I hear from downstairs, my wife, Angie, says, Ricardo. And I know Peter showed up. And he'll be holding a little cup of coffee that Angie will put. And we'll talk for a while. He'll always have a book in his hand. Generally, he leaves it at home. And so I figured, how did I become friends with this guy? I figured out when I was a little kid, what my parents would do the parents would take you to places and they say oh, there's kids your age there. Which for me, that I was a really shy boy, was super scary. It was the worst thing my parents could tell me. Was, there's gonna be kids your age there. I was like, no. And then they'll go be friends. And you go, I don't know how. And now I realize as a middle-aged guy that it turns you make some people, me and the wife generally, she did more of an effort. We made 3 girls, and then they bring their friends and they bring their parents. So it's like their kids bring, Phoebe was very kind. She brought Peter and Katie to our house. And you guys make friends. Oh no, again. So now I'm 50 and I'm still in the same scary situation when I have to make friends with people I don't know. But this guy was like a really easy friend to make, just because he had a book. Every time I see him, he's always with a book in his hand. Maybe he's crossing a road. He doesn't care. He's just, oh, yeah. And I went, oh, that's my kind of guy. So we exchange some information, reading habits and stuff like that. And I was thinking, what could I read that related somehow to what Peter does? Because my stuff is kind of weird, and I have a daily strip, which is you can buy outside later. I'm happy to sign it. After you buy Vievee's and Sara's and Peter's book. And I have this daily strip, and it's kind of weird, and it's always very condensed, the daily strip. Like, it's almost a haiku. It's a really, really short story. That's the reason I decided to dedicate myself to that, because my attention span is very short. Like, my brain works in tweets, which is daily strips. So I've been doing that for 20 years, but it was kind of weird to read a daily, strips here. It's better if you guys do it by yourselves. But then I had this book that I wrote many years ago, and I kind of feel it was related to Still No Word From You, because the way Peter works is he works with memories, and he works with his family, and maybe little stuff that got stuck in his brain from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, and he makes it into these little tiny chapters, and then he shows it with, he mixes it with other books and literature and stuff like that. And I thought I have one like that. Whew, I can do that. So I have this book, which is What There Is Before There's Anything There. It's a book for kids. It's a book for existentialist kids, I guess. It's kind of a complicated title there. The other day I found a podcast with 2 guys talking about the book. I guess if you put podcast and the name of the book, this will show up. And they're like for 30 minutes or 40 minutes, flabbergasted, like completely confused by my book. Like, who would read this to their kids? This is like, why would a parent submit a kid to this? Because it's a scary book. It says right there, it's a scary story. And I was like, it was the funniest thing I heard. It was very good. But then, like, why do I write these kids? Why do I write for kids? Because when I do the daily strip, I do them for me. It's the daily strip that I would like to read in the newspaper. But when I write for kids, I know that the reader is going to be a kid. So what do I do when I write for kids? And there's a couple of big concepts that I always go by. And one of them is I don't want to teach them anything. I don't care. If your kid doesn't eat their vegetables or hit their sister, I don't care. If they don't brush their teeth, I don't care. It's very hard for me to make my 3 girls brush their teeth. I don't have any responsibility to any of your kids. The one thing I do want to happen when a kid reads my book is that when he finishes the book, he'll go like, oh, I want another one of those. I want another one of these objects with papers, and that stuff happens. And the way that you get that is by making the kid feel something. So you can make him laugh, or you can make him sad, or you can make him scared. And if it's a real emotion, they're gonna go hunting for that emotion again. And that's the thing with kids' books. A lot of people take them for granted or think it's all more or less the same. Let's give them My Little Pony, it's the same. And no, the kids' literature is super important because it's the base of the whole architecture of your reading years. Like, it's what you read when you're a little kid. It's gonna be right down there. And kids' books are like grown-up books. Some of them are good, a lot of them are very bad. Happens a lot that an actress or a late show host or whatever, they have kids and they go like, I'm gonna write a book for kids. And they grab like some illustrator. They don't put the name of the illustrator in the cover. Jimmy Fallon. And and then they publish these things because they figure, I'm gonna write it fast. And I tell my kids stories at night and they like it. But the thing is, to your kids, you are an absolute hero. Like, you're amazing. You're just the giant that lives with them, that knows how to make food, how to drive a car. You're a superhero. So if you read them the Wall Street Journal, they're gonna like it. It's not that easy. And there's a reason why we keep reading Maurice Sendak's books and Bemelman's and Tommy Ungerer and Dr. Seuss. Like, these guys keep reprinting over and over, and all these late show host books are gonna disappear. They're bestsellers for a week, and then we'll never hear from them again. Because it's very hard to write for kids. And my thing was that, how do I make them feel something? And there's a thing Maurice Sendak said in a documentary, that he said, you can tell them anything. As long as it's true, you can tell them anything. So I kind of had that in my head, and I was thinking of what to do here, and I had this memory from my youth, from my very, very young years, maybe one of my first memories. I might have been like 5 years old. And the memory was when my parents said, good night, Ricardito, back in Buenos Aires, and they would turn off the light, and for a second I couldn't see the roof, the ceiling. I couldn't see it. And me being so young, I thought it disappeared. Wow. So that's where I started. So no spoilers. That's the first few pages. So let's read it, what there is before there is anything there. It's a mouthful. A Scary Story by Liniers. There's like a little self-portrait in the cover. That's me. Aw, yes. Here we go. Okay. I want to say that this book, I think, is out of print, so eBay. All the other books, the Norwich Bookstore. Okay. It's the same every night. From the door, his father says, good night, buenas noches. From the door, his mother says, sweet dreams. We see this little kid goes to sleep. And then they turn out the light. Then something incredible happens. Where there was a ceiling, now there is nothing. He could see the ceiling with his very own eyes. Now there's only a black hole, black and infinite. He knows that they are coming. They come every night when the ceiling disappears. First comes one. It's not always the same one. It floats down from where the ceiling was, slowly, slowly. This is where kids begin to be very scared. Mommy, stop reading. No. It stands on the edge of the bed without making a single sound. It stares at him. It doesn't stop staring. It never says anything. Dun, dun, dun. And then come more, and then more come down. Lots more. They don't say anything. They just stare at him. He starts to feel scared because he knows what is coming next. It comes every night when the ceiling disappears. It is dark and shapeless, blacker than the blackest darkness. And it's the only one that speaks in a very low voice and whisper. It says, I am what there is before there's anything there. Here kids starts crying. He jumps out of the bed. He runs out the door, down the hall, to his parents' room. His father says, "What's wrong? Not again." His mother says, "We've told you 100 times, it's just your imagination. Sometimes you make things up. It's good to be able to make things up." Then they say, "Okay, you can sleep with us, but this is the last time." And they turn out the light. And if it's a good like scary story, it should have like a dun 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 moment. So here we go. Dun 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 dun. Next one. What? Oh, you didn't see the dun 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 moment. This is it's. Here we go. I can show you guys. So he's in the bed, and then the little thing comes back, and he just stands there. Dun, dun, dun. And and it's not because I'm mean that I want to scare kids, but it's because I remember that when I was a little kid, I loved to be scared. I loved to see like silly, bad, like Jack Palance as Dracula, scary movies. And I thought, oh, if I get over the other side, I'm brave and I'm courageous and I'm brave enough to see Jack Palance go, "I'm gonna suck your blood," or whatever. And so I wrote this book for the kind of kid that I was. And that's the other thing. There are all kinds of different kids. They're not the same kid. And so I wrote this one for the ones that want to get a little bit scared. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Amazing. So at this time, we're going to just take a quick break, and we have the great pleasure of the music by Bill Craig and Rafael Flores. If they're there, they are. So we're going to just have a little bit of music so you can stretch, get a little wine or water, a little bite to eat, and then we'll come back in like 5-10 minutes and continue with Vievee Francis.
I should have brought my my strap, but
hey, if you want to begin this, you can, because it's just in our eyes anyway.
yeah. I think you know, but I do. Probably play this till the cows come home. Yeah. You solo, I solo, we'll just have fun. Yeah. You want a solo over form or just over to G? Yeah. Yeah, good. On Puno. Yeah, we can do all variations. All right. And then whenever we come back to the. Yeah, exactly. So I can start it if you want, or we can roll.
start.
All right, and the bam, boom, bum, bum, bam.
Yeah.
And we're just in. Okay. We're in.
Yeah.
Let's do it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Hello, hello. I am talking. Oh yeah, you can hear that. Sounds a little weird. Hi, Jordan. Hi, I'm Cedar. I'm talking into the microphone. I'm talking to...
Absolutely. Where are you at?
I don't know. What do you want to play?
Something punchy.
Something punchy.
Yeah, see.
Read all that. Oh, sure.
What's that?
Wait.
What?
Here?
Nah, never. I was just turning pages.
What about I Mean You?
I need you.
That's it. You know the long tune I Mean You? Yeah.
Yeah, you got it? In here somewhere, yeah. There you go. All right. Keep it up. That was lovely. Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
We swing the best we can.
Ding, ding, ding. This is an invitation to please come back to your seats. I don't have any good jokes to tell. I'll take my shirt off. Hello, everybody. I'm going to ask you all to please come back and find a seat, if you would. If you can let the people in the lobby know that we're going to get started with our next reading, please. Jordan? You. Oh, yeah. Okay, again, if I could ask the people in the back to please wrap up your conversations. We'll have some more time after the reading. I'm going to call Faith Catlin out specifically. All right, I'm going to start calling out names. Please, somebody tell Faith that she's going to be in detention. Okay, Rabbi, I need you to bring up the rear. Could Rabbi Melamut please bring up the rear? Rabbi Mark? I need your help. John Griesmer is helping us out. Thank you. I was given the heavy task to wrangle. So I appreciate Angie and all of those folks in the back. If we could come in and be quiet, please, we're going to get started. Okay, thank you, everybody. It's a total joy to see everybody enjoying themselves. So just a reminder that after the final reading, we'll have a chance to ask questions to the writers, and then we'll do a little book signing. But at that time, I don't know, maybe Bill and Raphael would play a little bit more at the very end. If you want to hang out, we've got some more wine. So please enjoy yourself. This is a space for coming together through the media arts, and we're thrilled that you're here. It is now my pleasure to introduce our next reader. I was introduced to Vievee's work by my sister, Brooke Lehman, who befriended Vievee in the English department at Dartmouth and brought home a collection of her poems that just blew me away, and I returned to. So it is really an honor to meet her in person and then be able to introduce. Vievee Francis is the author of 4 books of poetry. Her third book, Forest Primeval, won the Hurston Wright Legacy Award and the 2017 Kingsley Tufts Prize. The Shared World, her 4th collection from Northwestern University Press, will be released this spring. Her work can be found in varied and numerous publications, including Best American Poetry, 6 times, as well as Angles of Ascent, Contemporary African American Poetry, a Norton anthology. In 2021, Francis received the Aiken Taylor Award for Modern American Poetry. It is my pleasure to welcome Vievee.
Great, thank you. It's wonderful being here. I just want to say to Peter that this is a joy and an honor. Break me, and I'll sing. My voice like marrow, a blood yolk spilled upon the counter. You can't stop this song. More hands than yours have closed around my throat. You may crack me. You have cracked me. I'm frightened, but so what? I'll testify. Witness. If you can listen, I slurped the frog leg soup gone bad, held a brass spoon like a barrel to my mouth. I could tell you what you want to hear, but I'd be broken just the same. So why not sing? I'm singing now, louder this time, and in the round. We are a wounding of red-plumed birds. Every voice, a bloody feather in the bone crown. These pages are stuck together. Okay. I've been thinking about love again. Those who live to have it and those who live to give it. Of course, there are those for whom both are true, but never in the same measure. Those who have it to give are like cardinals in the snow, so easy and beautifully lit. Some are rabbits, hard to see, except for those who would prey upon them, all that softness and quaking and blood. Those who want it cannot be satisfied, eagle-eyed, and with such talons, any furred thing will do. So easy to rip out a heart when it's throbbing so hard. I wander out into the winter. I know exactly what I am. Okay. Here we go. The shore. It's 2 pages. I'm gonna make sure I can separate them. The shore. In a nondescript hotel in South Texas, I fell in love with a couple. There in the dim hallway with rugs that were clean enough but darkly patterned to hide the stains, so who knows. Her back was against the wall, her arms up and around his neck. He was bent down to kiss her, to press his body into hers. Their bodies were fluid, two waves not crashing, but moving through each other. I watched them from the other end of the hallway, surprised. I halted. Doesn't another's passion make us want? They never saw me. I didn't stay long, and I stayed silent. She was not his wife. But his love was palpable. His hands were tender, not quick, slow, not furtive. That press. I have been witness to such passion more than once and more than most. On a nondescript street in Manhattan, in a nondescript restaurant, whose patrons, too young to value discretion or quiet, spoke in loud voices and fell drunkenly over the tables. I saw a friend through the oversized windows, the street lit by random lights. He drew her body up into his body. She was no friend of mine. She followed me to follow him. She found him and drew his face down to hers. They kissed in a way that said they had kissed many times before, and perhaps it had been a long time. The kiss was long and deep, and I ate my steak au poivre bloody and waited for them to finish, for him to come back to the table after rushing out to take a call. They never saw me watching, didn't even look up. He swept her up, as if his entire body longed for a certain kind of completion. Her hair so like his mother's, he might have cried into it. But where is the shame in that? She was not his wife. I am not his judge. I was only on the shore, only a witness to the oceanic, dangerous, titled, reckless, and always. Nouveau Slim. I think about apologizing before I read this, but no, I'm not going to. Nouveau Slim. Some are convinced if I simply practice yoga, if I just consider it, I could be white. American white. The small of my spine, right here, would uncurve, straighten, as would my teeth. And the gap between my teeth would close as a gap between my thighs magically opened without me having to spread my legs, except upon a thin mat next to another doing the same. In pants like another skin, and that is the point of American yoga. The great equalizer. As if my breast will stop swinging apart, as those of the women in my line tend to do, our nipples under by 30, whether we nurse or not. As if my belly would suddenly flatten into some sign of discipline, and my self-denial would be taken as a sign of class, here in this free Vermont, where I have lost my appetite, even as I long for brisket and ribs and collards and kale, stewed the way the poor stewed them before the wealthy decided they wanted that too. And what's not to love here? The air, the light, the houses older than ships. I can't keep anything down but me. Here, where I'm free to be anything but in this body, which is in this skin. But I don't miss brown people. I hunger for round people. The body uncorseted by male design, the body roiled with its curated appetites, content in stillness and in its security, having at last stopped its reaching. Okay. Thank you. Omnivore. Everyone knows that I am alive, that I chew. Cesar Viejo. Rat, teeth to the wood, hoary masticator of plaster, brick, plastic, and bone. And you, goat, chomping with your mouth full of grass and 10, we have no argument. I know the heart must bite to beat. I know, like the young know, everything must be tasted. Everything, carrot, carpet, flesh. So I will gorge on this life from sour tit to Last Supper. until the fields of tomatoes despise me, until the cupboard is bare, until there is nothing left but dust. Then, finally, I will bite into that too. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Ivy. Incredible. Okay, Peter, it's time. So I'm very happy to welcome Peter, and I'm just going to make this a sort of personal bio of Peter, because when I was reading the About section on his website, it would take a long time. You all know how recognized he is for his incredible writing and his career. The awards go on and on. But my first connection to Peter was just he was a dinner guest at my sister Allie Baker's house and had just moved to the Bay Area with his wife Katie, who's back there, with Roscoe, who was a little one, and they were just back from Africa. And realized that our lives had crisscrossed like this. I had been in the Bay Area but didn't know them. And they were newcomers to this community, and how lucky are we to have them. Peter, I just want to really talk about just his generosity as an artist and an inspiration to so many other writers. He has, if you're a student of Peter's in the room, or a former student, raise a hand, give a little shout, woo, okay. And I've had the fortune to also just work in this building with Peter and to share the evolution of the space. And I'm so grateful that he invited his friends to come together for this event, and really was the vision behind our gathering tonight. So, as you know, he's got a new book out, Still No Word From You, and I believe that's what you're going to read from, but I'll let him tell you. Yeah, Peter, is that okay if we just leave it at that? Because I think most people know a lot of us. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Thanks for, Samantha was the, put together this whole event, and I'm so grateful for her and for her great staff, Jordan and Cedar and Charlie. All of you guys have been so incredible putting all this together, and I really appreciate it. Thank you all for coming out on a rough night, especially. It's very, very hard to follow Vievee Francis, so I'm freaking out. I've known Vievee for I don't know, 5 years now, but I've never ever actually heard you read, and I've been reading you, and so to hear you read in person was really special, so thank you very much. Thanks Bill and Raphael for playing. Ricardo, thank you for everything that you do in my whole life. And Sara, thank you for coming up all the way from Brooklyn in a snowstorm. She drove through the freezing rain to be here, right? So I really appreciate it, and thank you for your wonderful piece from your really great novel, which everyone should get. So that said, I also want to thank Sam and Emma for all they do at the bookstore and for being here tonight as well. So thank you. And since I'm out of thank yous, I have to do something else. But again, I'm still sort of, Anyway, Ricardo did this incredible version of the cover of the book, which I hope to replace on the paperback. This is what I want. I'm not doing it any other way. But on the back, I don't know if you saw, is Muhammad Ali. There's a reason for that. So that's where I'll start. Even my grandmother, who appreciated the choreography of boxing as a former dancer, knew that Ali couldn't beat Larry Holmes in 1980. He was too slow, too old. Ali in name only. The saddest thing were his legs, motionless as tree trunks. A man who used to dance. They say he needed the money. Blamed Don King and his hair combed skyward. Couldn't Ali have done something else to raise the cash? I only wanted it to be over. When the bell rang to end the fourth just before the commercial break, Ali retreated to his corner, but he didn't slump down on his stool. It was like Ali had jammed him, it was like Holmes had jabbed him to sleep on his feet. He seemed to have no idea where the stool was. I wasn't the only kid who believed he was doing this for me. Sure, there was a fat check waiting for him, whatever happened, but he was sacrificing his body for me. A dumb Jewish kid in the suburbs, I'd absorbed the Christ metaphor like everybody else. Sunk in the big black leather chair in the den, watching, not watching, trying not to watch, hands over my eyes, peeking between my fingers. Ali's cornermen push him down by the shoulders to the stool, and just before the cut to commercials, his face. More disinterest than weariness, the kind of indifference that comes from being bone worn out. It was long past anything to do with physical tiredness. Save him, I begged Purina Cat Chow. Round 5, 6, 7, 8, it no longer matters. And you'd think Holmes would start to take it a little easy, but Ali is making twice as much win or lose, and so Holmes has a point to make. Holmes was not a great fighter, which captures the essence of a final truth. Eventually, mediocrity beats the shit out of everyone. Larry Holmes was a workaday heavyweight who'd once been Ali's sparring partner, so there's poetry in it too. Ali, of course, understood this, given his genius for being all things to all people. The hired help is champion now, as it should be. I don't believe Ali ever begrudged Holmes the beating. A dull fight, what I allowed myself to see of it. Ali held up his gloves to protect his face, and Holmes almost gently swatted them aside and clobbered with the same overhand right to the head again, and again. And then it became a thing. After every round, Ali would retreat to his corner, but he would not sit. It was as if to give in to his knees now would have meant remaining on that stool forever. His standing there like that was a lot worse than the fight itself. His cornerman shouting, cajoling, pleading, "Sit down, Mohammed, please, please." But he was no longer capable of hearing anything, and I could tell this from Chicago, alone in front of the TV in the den. There may have been other people in my house, but I was alone. And I wanted to whisper into his ear, "Mr. Ali, even my brother won't talk to me." And also, fuck Don King. The last thing I remember after they stopped it was that the ring was mobbed by all the people who loved Ali, including Larry Holmes. The victor struggled against the tide of bodies to get to Ali, because even Holmes wanted, desperately, beyond desperately, to confirm that those wounds were real. The man himself, rest in peace, Mr. Ali. So this book's all over the place. I'm not even going to attempt to explain. But it's sort of memoir pieces mixed in with pieces that are not are more, I guess, literary criticism of my sort, which is hopefully not literary criticism that comes to mind when you think of literary criticism. And I apologize because I cannot now not find. Okay, here it is. There's no titles on these. I could give a diatribe on. I hate titles. I'm done with titles. I'm not going to give that diatribe. But you know, they're too guidey sometimes, I think. Not for everybody. Not for everybody. Everyone needs titles. But Howie Baumgarten was one of those people who returned to his hometown because it's the last place that will have him. Having failed every other place, where else is there? Not that anybody in our town would have cared much if Howie Baumgarten dropped dead in the street wearing one of his homemade tie-dyed T-shirts. He opened up a store on Central Avenue and 2nd Street where Chandler's Stationery used to be. Howie's place was filled with cheap, random stuff nobody wanted. We'd go there after school and not buy anything. Also, Howie had a monkey. I forget the monkey's name. With that gaunt little monkey on his shoulder, Howie spoke in sudden spastic bursts. His voice was so high it was like he'd sucked up the helium he used to blow up his balloons. The man could monologue and breathe through his nose at the same time, and you don't realize what a feat this is until you try it. When Howie talked, his monkey listened, his little head in profile. And then, without warning, as abruptly as he'd begun, Howie would clamp up and go completely silent and squint at us from behind his oversized glasses. And then he'd watch us as we wandered around the store picking stuff up, putting stuff down. Shoplifter, Howie said. Any one of us rosy-cheeked little fucking nothings could be a shoplifter. I'm ad-libbing here. The monkey would watch us like a hawk. Gag gifts, dusty art supplies, magic tricks, knockoff slinkies. The man sold goldfish that he scooped out of a dirty fish bowl with a spoon and dropped in Ziploc baggies. And balloons, always balloons, and off-brand candy, and grow-it-yourself crystal. Any useless Hazarai a wholesaler was trying to unload cheap, Howie would buy in the eternal hope that some person someday in some not-so-distant future might drop $2 or $3 on it. I'm not looking to get rich, he'd say. I'm only looking to... And he'd squeeze a plastic dog turd that squeaked. Get it? Get it? Eek by. That joke never works. I don't know why I say it. Should have cut it from the book. Eek by, like he steps on the dog turd and then says... Most of the time, his speeches were about how he'd been ripped off by one supplier or another. These people are rapacious. You've got no idea what a small businessman in America endures. Not a single clue. Tell your fathers, those paper titans, those captains of non-industry, those bilkers off the tit of the common man, what it's like out here in the harsh light. My dad sells lumber, Mickey Ross would say. How he let out a long hiss, and then he waited, and then he speechified. Proletariat of the world, unite. We'll hang all your fathers, each and every one of them by their toes like Mussolini. We'll start with the lumber barons. History is circular, don't forget. What goes around if you think if you shit on people, you won't get shat on, that it flows only one way? My dad works at the Ace, Howie. He doesn't own it. Then, without transition, Howie would bolt right into a few rousing thoughts on how even so things were getting even better every day. A little hunkier-doorier, that we be surprised how many old ladies came in for the costume jewelry. The biddies spend all the money they squirrel away on earrings. They pay me in quarters and nickels. They shake out their coffee cans on this very counter. The savings of a lifetime. Isn't everybody entitled to a little beauty? I'm in the dream business. I hold up the mirror so they can look at their sparkling ears. He didn't seem to have any family left in town, or maybe they disowned him a long time ago. We didn't know where he lived. He may have slept in the back of the store. Whatever the case, he didn't have much, just the rented storefront and the things he worked so hard to collect. There was always new inventory. Check out these magnets. They work on skin. It's a miracle. I'm serious. Give me your arm. Howie may have been an ordinary loser, but inside his store, behind his counter, he was king freak. That wild bramble of curly hair, his pea-like eyes behind those giant glasses, the tie-dye shirts that didn't fit over his stomach, the monkey. Senior year, Mickey Ross drew a cartoon of Howie for the school paper. In it, Howie, monkey on his shoulder, holding a festoon of balloons, floats away into space. I've been trying to remember what the caption said, because apparently it was the caption even more than the drawing that set Howie off. He ranted for weeks. He said he'd been humiliated before the eyes of the world, as if the shoreline was the Wall Street Journal. Not merely personally insulted, but legally injured. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. It's a tort. Any of you fuckwads know what a tort is? An act or omission that gives rise directly or indirectly to any injury or harm actionable in... He wrote letters to the editor. He wrote letters threatening to sue Mickey, Mickey's parents, the school district, the superintendent, the city of Highland Park, the state of Illinois, the NFL, and the League of Women Voters. He banned Mickey Ross from the store. For life, he said, effective immediately. He put a poster in the window, his own cartoon of Mickey with exaggerated buck teeth, and under it, banished in perpetuity. I call Mickey in Chicago. We still talk. He's one of the few people who answers the phone anymore. He couldn't remember the caption either. It was some forgettable joke, Mickey said. He's had his own knocks, rough divorce, in and out of work, trouble with one of his sons. He never says what kind of trouble. You think I don't still feel bad about it? Last thing Howie needed was some smart-ass drawing a picture of him. You writing about Howie? What makes you say that? Why else would you call? I call you all the time. Spare him the pity. Spare him the false amends. Jesus, am I wrong? I'm just trying to tell it straight, not make a character out of him. Right, Mickey says, because he was already a character. You don't have to do any work. Do you remember the monkey's name? He must be dead by now. The monkey? Howie, Mickey said. How are you doing, I said. I mean, really. You're asking? I called you. You called me about Howie. Mick, tell me how it is. A few months after the cartoon, it was summer, college, followed by whatever we've done with our lives since. Eventually, Howie closed the store and reopened a few months later in Evanston near Northwestern. He must have figured out he'd had better luck with college kids. That store didn't last long either. I try to resist this temptation. Vanished people should stay vanished, no matter how findable they've now become. He was just some funny dude we knew in high school. In the afternoons, we'd hang out at his store. In a post dated February 12th, 2020, Howie Baumgarten writes that he's in a spot and he could use some help, any help. I'm not particular, he wrote. Cash, checks, PayPal, no longer accepting the Discover card. And there was a single comment. It was from a kid I remember from high school, a year below us. I always liked you, monkey man. Stay strong. Nobody can hide anymore. Nobody even wants to hide anymore. I call Mickey back. Howie's not dead, I said. I'm going to read one more, if that's okay. And it's, where? Sorry. Maybe I do need titles because then I could find things. Right. This is embarrassing. Here it is. Okay, and this starts with a quote from the great poet Donald Justice. Justice wrote, and I think one of the great 3 lines, horses have gone lame crossing the wastelands between 2 people. Donald Justice, at a rehearsal of Uncle Vanya. Mid-morning, and my grandfather is sitting at his desk, his notary public stamp in his upper left-hand drawer, alongside the pornographic comic books he brought back from the war. I drank those comics into my eyes in gulps. I also played with the notary stamp. You held it by the 2 scissor handles and squeezed. I notarized everything. Dollar bills, toilet paper. I notarized ants. I squeezed them to death by the authority vested in me by the Secretary of State of the state of Illinois. My grandfather looks out the window at the front walk. Nobody is expected today. It's a shame because my grandfather always loved company. He'd shoot the shit with anybody about anything. And he liked to keep a conversation going, any conversation. He'll be dead in a couple of hours. At the moment, he's restful, calm. Whatever will make his heart cease just before noon will have nothing to do with physical exertion. He's been reading William Tecumseh Sherman's memoirs. On the 8th, all our troops reached the neighborhood of Clinton, the weather fearfully hot and water scarce. Johnston had marched rapidly and in retreating had caused cattle, hogs, and sheep to be driven into ponds of water and there shot down so that we had to haul their dead and stinking carcasses out to use the water. On the 10th of July, My grandfather's eyes drift off the page. The book remains, though, in his lap, and now he's staring at the window, at nothing in particular, at the flat-topped shrubs he's trimmed himself. It's early April, and the birds have gone quiet. After he retired, he put all his Civil War memoirs in alphabetical order by general: Grant, Longstreet, McClellan, Pope, Sheridan. There's a gap where Sherman's book should be. We should have a word for that, the space on the shelf where a book used to be. There's no word for an empty grave either. He also neatly organized by date the letters he wrote from his own war. He wrote my grandmother a letter a day for 3.5 years he was in the South Pacific. I found them stuffed in a plastic green Marshall Fields bag, Marshall Fields in frilly white script at the back. I'm sorry, Marshall Fields in shrilly white script. Anybody from Chicago knows that script. At the back of his closet, when years later, after my grandmother's death, I helped clear out the house for the estate sale. The letters were rubber banded and arranged by month and year. In them, he often begs my grandmother to write him back, to tell him what's happening at home. Please, Lorraine, can't you put pen to paper and write to me? He's wearing those big glasses, and the flare of the morning sun flashes off the metal frames. His wide forehead and perfectly round head, not totally bald. He has a sheen of hair that covers his head in thin parallel lines because he spends every morning combing them. He's not a vain man. He only wants to pay homage to what little he has. My grandparents rock hard separate beds. Even so, he's always been close enough to reach her, touch her across that dark. Whether he ever did, I don't know. My grandmother was a dancer, a showgirl. Throughout the mid to late 1920s and into the early 30s, before she eloped and had my father 5 months later, she danced at the Oriental, the Mick Vickers, and the Panther Room. I have a stack of her publicity photos. My grandmother at 19 in a feather boa, bare left leg raised high. My dead look-out windows. So many of these windows are gone, I'm not sure it matters. 814 Lunt Avenue, 322 Fargo Avenue, 78 Pine Point Drive, 513 Hillside Drive. 10th of July, 1945. My darling, another day and still no word from you. But I suppose that last week, this time, you were in the process of moving. I know how busy you must be. How is everything working out? Are you satisfied? Do you think you will like it? I'm so worried that the house is going to be too much for you and that you won't like it. I hope I'm wrong. Please write. And today my grandmother is taking a shower, and he can hear the water running, and he thinks vaguely of her body and how he used to hunger for it, the water streaming down her shoulders. That's that. If I could find it, there's a picture of my grandmother, but it's in here doing the thing with the thing. Thank you so much. Really, thanks everybody for coming, and Samantha's going to come back up.
Thank you. Could I get the four of you guys to come together? Do we need to move this one or no? Okay. So we wanted to give all of you an opportunity to ask questions, or it could just be, to shout out. But we thought we would maybe ask the writers to ask each other a few questions, if that's okay, or whatever you'd like to say to each other to kick us off. And then after that, I'll call on some folks to chime in.
I wanted to ask Peter, do you know who's picking up our daughters from our theater?
Since all four of us are here, I don't know.
And we have one daughter each performing at their school.
They're going to kill us. That's the question. But I bet Angie knows. That's my thought. Bye. 5 years.
Can you hear me?
Sarah? What? Sarah? Sarah.
I know so much about that community.
Which community? The Summer community, the Pacific community? Which community? The local community or?
The upstate New York.
I just did a lot of research. I mean, I spent a lot of time as a child actually not in the Catskills, but on the other side of the river in the Poconos in Wayne County, Pennsylvania. I spent a lot of time as a child at summer camp and then later, many years later, as an adult staffer back at the same summer camp where I went as a child. And that's sort of where a lot of the seedlings of the novel came from, was sort of when I was up there and in Wayne County, Pennsylvania. And so then on my days off, I would cross the river, I would go into Sullivan County, and I spent a lot of time just sort of driving and then doing a lot of research. But I didn't grow up. I mean, a lot of people grew up, with these memories of Catskills and the Borscht Belt, but that was not mine. But I did spend a lot of time doing research. And then actually, ironically, years later, once the novel actually went on submission, I found myself in the pandemic renting a bungalow. I mean, my novel, I didn't speak about it in the section, but there's a whole bungalow sort of subplot. But I found myself actually in 2020 at a bungalow colony in that region, and so it was sort of poetic in that sense.
You also have the mic in Campbell.
Oh yeah.
I have a question. So, Peter, this is probably going to be difficult to answer, but I want you to really try, because I need to know for myself, for my own writing. When you have an idea, when do you determine that you're going to kind of take it on as memoir, near memoir, and when are you going to utilize something for fiction?
Gets blurry. And you're implicated in this, actually, because every Friday, Vievee and I and Bill and Sally and John is here, meet, and we share our work. And when that deadline comes around, which is happening in a few hours, I gotta get something done. So that's one reason. But the other thing is I sometimes use it for both. Fiction and nonfiction are blurry to me. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I will take one story. Like there's a story in here about I had a roommate in college who it's kind of a horrible, sad story. But he attempted suicide. It didn't work out. He was unsuccessful, thankfully. And I've told that story fictionally, and then I thought, well, you know what? Let me try and just tell it straight, and it felt right. But that's sometimes the opposite. So I can't answer that. I wish I could.
No, actually, I think that's a great answer, because it allows us to think of it in both ways, which I hadn't thought of before.
But couldn't I ask the same question of you?
No,
When do you
short
write
stories.
memoir? You write memoir.
One
Can I say that?
memoir.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, how do you decide something's going to be a poem versus something that's going to be prose?
Oh, that's a different question. Okay. If it's a longer story, if it falls more deeply into story, then I move it into prose. But if it's just a glimpse of something or one idea that I want to kind of explode, then I move it into poetry. It's not as neat as that, but I think about it all the time.
You reminded me of this scene in the movie Sideways. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's these two friends, and one of them is a writer, and he's waiting to hear from his publisher if his novel is going to get published, and so he's kind of nervous. And he goes into this house, and there's this guy, kind of like a jock, and he's talking to this poor Paul Giamatti, and so you get an image of the actor. And he says that, so what do you do? And he goes, I write fiction, I write novels. And the guy goes like, well, there's so many great stories in the world, why would you make one up? And the guy goes like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Which was kind of heartbreaking. But the reason why I read fiction is I love to find the truth hidden in the lie that fiction is. There's a lie there. And when I read essays or memoirs, is, okay, so this is true. This is, I'm going to go on a trip with this guy. But, so do you go through that when you're writing? Do you hide stuff in your fiction stuff? Because we live surrounded by writers, and a lot of fiction is not fiction.
Sarah, you comment on that?
A lot of fiction is not fiction. Well, I mean, I do believe that we can somehow access a greater truth through fiction. So, yes, I think that's why we love it so much, perhaps. I had a question, actually, for Peter, but also it relates to Ricardo. Maybe it's for everyone, but I was thinking a lot about, Peter, your love of reading and sort of the relationship with text as we see in your memoir. And, we get these glimpses of you as a child in the ravines and, struggling over piano and so forth, and I'm wondering when your relationship with reading developed, and also riffing off a little bit of what Ricardo shared, and maybe this is for everyone, but was there a seminal, first of all, when you're part one, when did your relationship with reading evolve, begin, and then part two, was there a seminal book from childhood that you remember, I mean, I'm just thinking about my own kids with, they're a little bit too old, but now I wish that they had experienced your book, and it makes me, actually, you mentioned Maurice Sendak a lot, who was really influential to me, as was, Laurie Siegel's Tell Me a Mitzi, which is, one of the most, I feel like that's the reason why I'm a writer today is because of Tell Me a Mitzi. I don't know if people are familiar with it. It was sort of out of print and whatever, but I'm just wondering, two parts of that. When did your relationship with reading develop, and is there a book from childhood that has that sort of stickiness for you, for everyone?
No, go ahead. I remember. Yeah, he goes like, but I do remember there was two things. One was the first time I remember having fun with the book and, not annoying my parents for a little while, was with a daily strip book. There's a big character in Argentina, our Charlie Brown is called Mafalda, which, so you guys can make an image of what Mafalda is. Mafalda is kind of like a little group of friends, so it would be Charlie Brown plus socialism. Highly recommend read. So I remember reading that when I was a little kid, and the cool thing about the daily strips was that I could finish them. I finished one. Great, I'm gonna read the next one. So I could finish them. It was, my first experiences. But then the book that made me a reader, I must have been 11, and I think this will also explain what I just read. Because what made me a reader at 11 was Pet Sematary by Stephen King.
Oh, no.
I think my parents were not paying a lot of attention. I want a scary book, Mama. And she was like, okay, there's this one. It has a cat. Have fun. And what I remember from that book was the first time somebody died in a book, and I felt it physically. Oh. I was like, whoa, I remember where I was coming back from school in a car, being very nerdy, and then the other thing that happened to me with that book was, it was late one night, and I don't know how many of you are acquainted with this story, but at some point there's zombie babies and stuff like that, but there's at some point this guy carrying a dead child through a forest, and at night. And I could not stop reading, because if I stop, the guy would get stuck there. So I just have to keep on reading to get him out of there. And I kept reading, because these have to get, books have happy endings. Maybe if I get there, not this one. So it was a very long night, but I became an absolute reader. I still read that guy, book he puts out. It's been a very expensive relationship.
I love this question, in especially thinking of it in terms of what book makes you a reader, and I think the book that made me a writer came later, but the book that made me a reader, I didn't understand at all. So I like when you mentioned socialism, because my father would read, it's almost MLK Day, and he would read Stride Toward Freedom to me. No child understands it. It doesn't make any kind of sense, but he was so passionate about it, and he wanted me to have this language that I had no way of taking in. But his passion made me a reader. And then I looked at, he had collections, anthologies of poetry, and I fell in love with Custard the Dragon, Custard the Cowardly Dragon, and I wanted to hug him. That made me a reader.
Google.
This is a hard, we were talking about this over at dinner, but I'm thinking about what made me a reader, triggering that, and I think it's a couple of books, and one, Cider House Rules, actually. There was something about the, and I think John Irving's become a little bit, whatever. He isn't even, he's left the country, actually. He's left Vermont. He didn't like the taxes in Vermont. He's kind of, anyway, that's not important. The point is, there was something so human about his dealing with the issues that he was dealing with. It was an abortion book, but it was so human. And the way that the way that everybody sort of figured out a solution at the end of that book, which basically live together, it was extraordinary, and I've never gotten over it. And the other one is Native Son from, I still have my copy from Highland Park High School, Mrs. Engerman's class. I'm still disturbed by it. I'm still disturbed by the opening scene with the rat. I'm still disturbed by the scene in the house, Bigger Thomas and the pillow. I mean, it is, so I think how to create a scene that I'm still reading after how many, like 35, right? And so I have a piece on Richard Wright in this book. He did something fascinating at the end of his life. He turned to haiku, and he wrote haiku after haiku after haiku. And so I think about that. Like the guy who wrote Native Son is writing haiku because he'd sort of, I don't know. I just feel like it wasn't that he was exhausted. I felt it was something else. He was reaching for something else. The poems are beautiful. Anyway, those are a couple of books that I wouldn't do what I do without.
Yeah, with the Cider House Rules thing, till this day, when I say good night to my girls, I go, good night, princesses of Maine, you queens of New England, which really confuses them. We're not in Maine, Papa. Like, and then, and Matilda, my daughter, who's 14 now, she read last year the Cider House Rules book. And it's just, it's one of those great books that I read a little bit older, but I wish I would have read it when I was 13 or 14. It's amazing.
Sure, yeah. And again, okay. Where are you? No, go ahead.
I just want to make sure we have time to wrap up before in about 5 to 10 minutes. I want to make sure. Do we have any questions?
So I'll admit that I don't know too much about your backgrounds, whether like you went to school for writing or that's your career in writing. But I imagine that there's a moment where you decide that you want your work to be shared, like that pre-publishing
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I don't, so just a bit of background, I guess, about myself is that I came from the world of magazines and journalism. So for me, from a very young age, from like 18, it was like I would write something, and then the idea was that, I always was sort of at some point thinking about the reader. And so it's an interesting question, I think, not to get too off your topic, but like, when does the reader come into the equation? When do we start thinking about a reader, right? Because I think there's a real danger in thinking about the reader too early, right? When we're like drafting and generating and sort of trying to figure out what the thing it is that we're trying to say, right? But at some point, later on in the revision process, we start to entertain the notion of a reader. And so for me, always that was part of it, because if there's not a reader on the other end, I mean, this might seem like, I don't know, perhaps too corny, but like, Ian Forster has that line of like, only connect, like the whole idea of, like maybe we have to tell these stories out of some urgency, but at some point, if we're not passing them along so that someone outside of ourselves can have an experience, good, bad, ugly, whatever that is, then it becomes sort of a masturbatory sort of closed circle, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, that's, right?
I was thinking that,
right?
I completely agree.
Yeah, so that was, I didn't have, it was a long struggle to get this novel out there, but if it didn't find any readers, maybe it's found like 2 at this point, but like that at this point, is like, okay, at least now it's not completely self-serving, right?
Yeah, for me it was scary when I was 18 or 19 or 20, and you start to figure out, what do I want to do? And I loved reading, and I loved painting, and I loved drawing, but I had nothing to say. 0 life experience. My parents hadn't even divorced. I had nothing. Nobody died. I have 4 living grandparents till I was 35. Something like that. No dogs. I didn't have dogs, so they didn't die either. I had nothing. So I would sit down and start doodling and trying to copy or find my way of drawing or something, steal from this guy, steal from that guy, but then stuff happens to you. What's really recommended is like a good heartbreak, like one of those that floors you, like goes like, oh, what? And then you go like, I'm gonna draw comics and I show her. But yeah. But it was for a while it was scary, because I would have here my Far Sides and Calvin and Hobbes and Mafalda, and all these people were saying stuff through their humor in a very strange and funny, but they were saying stuff about life and it took me a while. But the other thing that was very good for me, and maybe you guys, I respect you too much, but for me it was like absolute 0 self-criticism. Like I thought everything was great. Well, look at that, and I would show it to her, and now I see it, and I go like, oh no, that was horrifying. But yeah, at some point it's important. Somebody will read your stuff, but it's important that you don't give it so much importance that it will scare you to say whatever you need to say, however you need it to say it. And basically, you're the only one that says the way you say it. Like these are 4 different persons here, and we all just say stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I'm wondering if any of you have lots of theories about Emily Dickinson, who had no relationship with any readers, and whether living in her internal world contributed to making her the incredible poet that she was.
I have this argument all of the time. Believe it or not, 3 days ago, I had, it was a subtle argument, but you could feel the heat of it, right? And the person I had the argument with, I just adore and is in the room. So I'm going to have the final word, so thank you for that question. And the answer for me is no. And I think it contributed specifically to her growth. That was her path. That's what she needed. But she didn't necessarily want the work out there, or there were things that, it was prohibitive, right? So that was her path. But I don't think someone else taking that path necessarily will lead them to being great artists. I think each path is very specific.
And, you know, and she was interested in publishing.
Was she?
A bit, yeah.
A bit.
She had
I
that
would say a bit.
contact with, what's his name, Colonel somebody or other. But I think she had an audience too, I think. I think she had audiences in her head. That's what I think.
Oh, in her head.
And not just in her head. Not just in her head. Not just in her
And
head.
I love her work, but
Yeah. I just think I think she was communicating. She was connecting.
To me, sometimes it's I have this feeling that genius, like there's talent, right? Like me, yeah, talent. But there's an extra step for genius, right? Like you could say Kafka or Emily Dickinson. Something pushes them forward to, you know, through these walls. And I think a lot of that sometimes is related to some kind of trauma. And trauma is not elegant. You know, it can push you into being Kafka or Michael Jackson or Roman Polanski, but it pushes you into being Michael Jackson and Roman Polanski. Like, you know,
Kafka, Roman Polanski,
you know,
Michael
but
Jackson.
yeah, you don't get like a universe that Lovecraft created by a normal people. You get it by a racist monster of a human being who is also like genius. There's something about something that pushes someone to be Muhammad Ali, and it's not just talent. It's something I think painful many times. Yeah.
That question about the publishing, my first story, oh yeah, no, forget that. Forget it. It's about a shoe, but anyway, yeah.
This may be a dumb question, but if anyone were to direct your work as a movie, who would it be?
That's good.
Roman Polanski.
That's a really good one.
Samantha Davidson Green.
I'm going for James Cameron for the money, because
Yeah. And it's going to be done at the Grange in Thetford, and their 10-minute, in our 10-minute play festival, I think it goes up February 7th or something, I can read that. You know, you see, what Samantha,
That's a good question.
But back to the question.
Who would?
I'm the wrong person to ask that. You know, I see like 2 movies a year. You know, like, I'm trying to think of like one. I'm starting to think of a funny answer, so I will. You know.
I have
Who
a
would you
funny
want?
answer. But I don't know, I don't really follow film enough to know directors, etc. However, I do know that I love Shonda Rhimes, so she can choose for me anything she wants to do. I'm good with. Shonda, please come back to your home, because you know,
Yeah,
she went
lives
to
in Norwich.
Dartmouth.
She lives in Norwich.
Has property at Norwich, yeah. So I'm always looking for her, but she's never around.
Is Robert Altman still alive? If he's around, I'll take him.
I would like a stop motion thing. I think that would be cool. Yeah, that thing that we just saw, but stop. Guillermo del Toro. Kind of selling one of those guys.
Cedar, I love your question because we want to be cross-pollinating here at JAM between the arts. I hope having our all the different genres and modes in which these creative artists express themselves. I hope that's been inspiring. I want to, before I release them from their chairs, a couple quick things. Coming up at JAM, as I mentioned, RIF is now under our roof, and RIF will be happening. RIF is White River Indie Film Festival, and one of the founders is here, John Griesmer, and Faith Catlin have been very involved, and many others. So we're going to be having a 4-day festival, March 23rd to 26th, upstairs in the Briggs Opera House, with various different kinds of activities, workshops, panels, parties. Between now and then, we have Rocky Horror Picture Show, February 11th, up at the Briggs. We are also going to have the Luna Fest Women's Film Festival, which is like a one-night-only event on March 10th at the Briggs. Lots of other good stuff going on. Up there, down here, we're open days, Monday through Friday. Here we have staff eager to help you learn how to use tools to express. We have a screenwriters group. We've got some of our screenwriters in the audience. We have a story jam every other month, which is just a no technology, just old-fashioned sit in a circle with a prompt and share a 5-minute story. If you're interested in beginning some writing or maybe a podcast, which we also support, that might be a good place to start. Or you can just wander in the door sometime when you're getting a coffee or pie next door and see what's up. But we're so happy that you were here with us tonight. I want to thank Vievee, Peter, Ricardo, and Sara again so much for sharing your talents. And they're going to stick around and sign some books. So thank you.
Did that go okay? Was that okay? All right. Because I was like, oh no, the panel.